Coronavirus.
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 From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
If you can believe it, it's now been 3 years since the government ordered us all to stay at home to help stop the spread of coronavirus. And for those of us who've stayed working remotely, 3 years of background interruptions.
I think you're on mute. I think you're muted. You're on mute.
And cats walking across your keyboard.
Rocco, could you tell them?
We discovered that remote actually can work. Productivity didn't suffer after all, and we've seen huge benefits. From savings on office spend for employers, to improved health and well-being and a better work-life balance. But there's a huge group of people that have been largely absent from the conversation around the future of work. Disabled people. 1 in 5 people in the UK have some form of disability, and the continued adoption of flexible working has the potential to fundamentally improve the ways in which some disabled people can access work. With the lifting of COVID restrictions in 2022, the requirement to work from home has ended, and several companies have become increasingly vocal about returning to the office. So where does this leave the idea of flexible working, and what does it mean for disabled people and work? This is how flexible working trends have changed since the start of the pandemic. The Office for National Statistics has reported that the amount of people working from home peaked at around 50% during the first lockdown, having risen from roughly just 12% in the months before the pandemic hit. Since the lifting of restrictions, the percentage of people working from home at least some of the time has fallen slightly and has varied up and down throughout 2022 and 2023, but without a really obvious downward trend. So it would seem flexible working has been fairly resistant to pressures like the end of restrictions and calls from managers and businesses to return to the office. A study by the job site Indeed has shown that jobs being posted which reference remote or flexible working still outpace pre-pandemic levels. So employers are clearly responding to the wants of today's workers and are still looking to incorporate flexible working into their working practices. Flexible working is clearly here to stay. So how has this impacted disabled people? One of the key benefits is the increased control over their working hours, which has helped reduce the stresses and strains that come with being a disabled employee. A survey of disabled employees by the TUC reported 40% of respondents had said their tiredness and fatigue had improved, with over a quarter stating their mental health had improved as a result. This is Elaine Boyd, Director of Audit Quality and Appointments with Audit Scotland, and recently recognised as one of the top 100 influential disabled people in the UK.
What I would say in terms of impact, the thing that I noticed very quickly was the amount of time that I had available. So previously I would have travelled quite a lot, and especially if I went to our Edinburgh office, that would take 4 hours out of my day, which was quite considerable. So I actually felt as if I could get quite a lot of work done. The other thing that it's probably done is reduce anxiety about travelling as well, because for a disabled person, it can be quite daunting if the travel arrangements you've made don't go well. Over the last week or two, I was in London last week and the lifts weren't working in the subway, and I was in Glasgow a day later and the lifts weren't working from the lower to the higher levels as well. So all these things cause anxiety and difficulty actually in travelling. The travel, the way I would describe that for a disabled person, uses up energy and more energy than someone without a disability. If you think about the spoon theory, you have X amount of spoons at the beginning of the day, and you try and use them wisely throughout the day. So I'm not saying I won't travel at all, but I think I'm careful that it's something that's specific and adds value through travel. It's not just a routine every day that I go out.
Anecdotally, it's even possible that flexible and remote working has allowed some disabled people to re-enter the workforce after extended periods of being out of the labour market. 80% of disabled workers surveyed by the Work Foundation said that working from home would be essential or very important if they were looking for a new job. And 70% of disabled workers said that if they were not able to continue to work remotely, it would negatively impact their physical or mental health. Of course, the positives experienced by some are not universal. Now, it's obviously not possible for every job to be made remote, for example in sectors like retail and health, which are some of the largest employers of disabled people. Disabled people are also underrepresented in higher paid jobs across the board. And we can see this reflected in remote working trends. 80% of people earning over £50,000 were working either flexibly or fully remote, whereas people earning between £20,000 and £30,000, the bracket in which the median income for disabled people would sit, that percentage falls to just 36%, less than half that of higher earners. It is just 29% for people earning between £15,000 and £20,000. Isolation for disabled people is also a big issue, with 60% of respondents reporting that they missed social interactions during the lockdowns, with another 30% saying that their mental health had been negatively affected.
I wouldn't have expected that. If someone had said, we're going to lock you down into your house and you're not going to get out and meet people, I would have said that would have been a real disaster for me, and it probably would be if it was a permanent thing. I still like to meet people in person, and I think you get a lot from that, but I made the best use of the technology I had, both in terms of my work life but also my personal life too.
If we dive deeper into disabled people's preferences for home working, we see just 35% say they want to work from home full time. This shows a clear desire for a more flexible approach to work and suggests employers will need to remain open to this moving forward if they want to retain disabled talent. Clearly, the benefits that flexible working brings around work-life balance, productivity, and improved mental health are key issues for all workers, and it's vital that this remains a key part of the conversation around the future of work. But flexible working has a fundamental role in reducing the disability employment gap, making work more accessible for many disabled people. And as we see greater representation of disabled people in work at all levels, including in management and leadership roles, the more we will see disabled people enter and return to the workforce, closing the disability employment gap. Work being truly inclusive is better for us all.